Hey guys, in this video we are moving along with an up close look at the enforcers in Battlefront 2, and today the microscope is on the B2 Super Battle Droid, the heavy unit of the Separatist army. So remember to watch those wrist rockets and pay attention as we decide whether it is a meme or a menace. Let's run over the basics. We always start with the total health, and right from the get-go this does not look good for the Super Battle Droid. The droid has 300 health before Star Guards. Now this is very low. Remember that Wookiees have 350 and Flame Troopers have 400. Remember that even with Star Guards, increasing the health works by percentage, so while the Flame Troopers' maximum health can get as high as 480, the droid is always limited to 360 max health. Fortunately, health regeneration is consistent with the other classes, with the droid beginning to self-heal after 6 seconds without taking damage, at a rate of around 37 points per second. The droid also has a movement and a sprint speed which is consistent with all the other enforcers, and that is slightly slower than that of a normal trooper class. As for the evasive ability, this is just another area where the droid seems to fall short. It has a very weak dash move, which is much shorter than that of a jump trooper or a Jedi, and it's more like a little hop. This is significantly less useful than a dodge roll possessed by the other enforcers, so this combined with the lower health makes staying alive as the Super Battle Droid a little bit of a challenge. Of course, as with all reinforcements, the Battle Droid can only be played in third-person view. This gives you a great field of view, however you need to remember that the wrist-mounted blaster is on the right arm, so when corner peeking on your left side, you have to stick out of cover a little bit further, or the blaster shots will just hit the wall in front of you. Now the low health and the lack of mobility are serious issues for the B2 Battle Droid. The good news is that it gets better from here on in. The wrist blaster, the overload ability and the wrist rocket are all really powerful tools to bear against both troopers and heroes. Let's focus first upon that wrist blaster. You need to think of this weapon a little bit like a marksman's pistol. Out of all the enforcers, it certainly demands the most precision, and it requires headshots to excel with. The other enforcer guns can kind of just be fired in the general direction of the enemy and do some damage, while this one requires a little bit more care. The flip side is that it is probably one of the more versatile enforcer weapons, being able to deal strong damage at close and medium range, and even compete at longer ranges. On to some numbers now, and the weapon has a base damage of 47 to the body, or 81 damage if you strike the head. As you draw out the range, this will begin to drop down, and its minimum damage at long range will be 25 damage to the body, or only 47 damage to the head. The distance shown here is the point at which this range drop-off is complete, and the damage will not be reduced anymore. Let's go into some DPS values. If you shoot continual body shots, you will deal 250 damage per second. So in theory, if you can land continual headshots, you can deal 350 damage per second, killing Luke Skywalker in 2 seconds flat. Although previously said, this gun does need precision, so actually getting maximum DPS out of this gun requires excellent shot placement. You need to note that unlike the other enforcer weapons so far, this is just a normal blaster bolt. There's no flame effect, no splash damage, so all kinds of blocks, shields, Yoda absorb abilities, and anything else that would normally stop a blaster bolt will also stop the damage from this wrist blaster. Another real strength of this gun is how long it takes to overheat. You can fire 24 shots before overheating, or almost 5 seconds of continuous fire. The cooling cycle is also very short, so you can fire this weapon a lot. The last little secret of the wrist blaster is how its upward recoil pattern works, and it's quite a significant little recoil pattern which does draw your shots upward unless you continually pull down on the stick or the mouse. However, if you zoom in, you will almost halve the weapon's recoil, making it a lot easier to control. Now let's have a little chat about that center ability, Overload. Now the B2's Overload, it's probably my favourite out of all of the enforcers, just because of how much fire it allows you to output, and it just sounds powerful as well. When the Overload is active, you will be able to fire continuously without generating any weapon heat. In addition, overload drastically increases the fire rate of the wrist blaster. So that's what it does. The best way to test this is with a DPS test. Remember that the normal fire mode will deal 250 damage per second to the body, but with overload you can deal 400 damage per second. Even more if you land shots to the head as well. So for those that thought the Wookiee was too strong and the Super Battle Droid was a weak enforcer, the Overload Wrist Blaster can easily match the damage output of a bowcaster and can do so more consistently and at longer ranges. Remember that the Overload has a duration of 9 seconds and a cooldown of 15 seconds. The downside, of course, is that it will cripple your poor mobility and evasion, and you will walk very slowly, you'll be unable to sprint, and you won't even be able to use that evade hop move. Overload can be used to great effect to cut down heroes and other enforcers with ease, or you can use it to lock down a choke point or corridor with a blistering barrage of fire. But remember, like always, you do have to aim. Overload will also increase drastically your weapon accuracy and stability, but to get that sweet damage, you will still need to place those shots on target. And this is a little bit harder than it is with the Wookiee, and definitely harder than the Flame Trooper where you just spray in the general direction of an enemy. Okay, so what about we move on now to the ordnance ability, and we're going to talk about the wrist rocket. So it's a pretty iconic part of the game. The first thing that we need to say is that it is also unique amongst Enforcer grenade abilities in that it's not a grenade, it's a rocket, so it has no fuse time, it detonates upon impact, and it has no travel arc, well, because it's a rocket. Placement is everything, because the blast radius is not huge, but the damage is still very high. Higher in fact than all of the other Enforcer explosives. A direct hit or something in immediate proximity to the explosion will suffer 250 damage. Now this is enough to outright kill any trooper. Remember that the Wookiee's thermal imploder is only 200 damage. Now this damage does swiftly drop off, and even at 3 meters away the damage is down to around 100. Fortunately, you can aid this by using star cards to drastically increase the explosion radius up to 80%, allowing you to deal large damage to multiple enemies. The rocket does have a cooldown of 33 seconds. That's a long time, so use it carefully. Unlike the other Enforcer grenades, you actually have to equip the rocket before firing. Doing so will prevent your evasive dash or sprint from functioning until you fire the rocket or unequip it again. The final ability to cover is Fortify, and if you are familiar with the other Enforcer videos, this will be exactly the same. Fortify provides 175 bonus health that accumulates fully 1.2 seconds after activation. This will endure for 18 seconds, or until you have taken that 175 points of damage in damage. Then you will need to wait 22 seconds for the cooldown to finish so that you can use it again. Fortify is the only thing that you have in your toolkit as a B2 battle droid to stay alive. You need to use it more carefully than the other Enforcers, because if you are surprised and it is on cooldown, you will be in a lot of trouble. For this reason, I recommend using it as a heal more than a preparatory ability. Save it until you really do need it. Okay then, so with all the numbers and the stats out the way, it's time to talk some tactics. As usual, I'll run up a list of tips so you can dominate those clones with the Super Battle Droid. From the get-go, it's very clear that despite its pretty amazing weaponry, the droid does lack some fundamental things that help other Enforcers to do well, namely its low health and it has a bad evasive ability. Because of this, the run and gun tactics that I recommend for other Enforcers don't necessarily work here. The B2 is less about roaming the battlefield and hunting for the enemy than it is picking a location and killing everything that moves through it. If you move around too much, then you will eventually find yourself in a bad position, with not enough health or evasion to get out. This is because the B2 definitely does not do well when surprised, unlike say the Wookiee or the Flame Trooper that can easily fight off an ambush. You will need to have really good situational awareness to have an idea where people are coming from in order to set up in a good place. Corridors and chokes work well, and if you can get the flank off, it is very rewarding. You just don't have the kit abilities to get out of a surprise. Even though it pales in comparison to the dodge roll, keep using that evade hop anyway, because it is better than nothing and it does allow you to put some distance quickly between explosives and other gunfire. You need to practice with that wrist blaster. Spamming a corridor can work, however it is better to focus down one target, then switch to another, then switch to a third, because multiple enemy combatants firing back at you will deplete your health very swiftly. You can really lock down corridors with this character, even as much so as a flame trooper or the Wookiee. Release an unrelenting hail of blaster fire through a doorway and punish anyone foolish enough to step through. When you have overload active, you have what is close to the highest damage per second potential of any character in the entire game. Oh yeah, so that super high DPS, it's also really helpful against vehicles, against shields, and against objectives if you need to take them out. Although this is a little bit less relevant at the moment because the Republic, who are the only faction you're fighting as the Droids, have a pretty limited vehicle garage at this point in time. The wrist rocket is a powerful tool, but you will need to get an idea of its blast radius first. Because of its small blast, it's almost worth aiming straight for the target, rather than hitting the ground beneath them like you would do with a rocket in many other games. Just remember that if you come around the corner with the rocket out and you shoot and you miss, you will probably be dead unless you can dash back into cover quickly, because it does take a while to ready your blaster and get it good to fire again after you shoot or put away the rocket. Finally, Fortify is better off used as a heal with this character, because as said earlier, if you need it and you don't have it, you will be in a world of hurt. And that is what we have for you today on the very high damage but unfortunately very easy to kill Super Battle Droid. It is a surprisingly fun enforcer to use, and it is capable of making some extraordinary plays. However, staying alive for a long time is very much so a challenge, because mistakes are pretty unforgiving to this class. Hopefully we'll have a similar video on the Death Trooper out soon, and then we might look at the Jump Troopers while we wait for DICE to pad out the light side armies with proper enforcers of their own, and not just the Wookiees all the time. Thank you so much for watching. This is Ascendance from 4FS Gaming.